Most of the updates from absentee and early votes from around the state, one part of rural Alaska up north, they still haven't got those for a few districts, but we have a big update. I'm going to go through these in a second. I'm going to make sure I'm testing out my new system, so I'm going to make sure it's all good. I'm just going to pull this up here and real quick pull up the stream. Again, the 1 second, let me deal with that. Again, the updates, Division of Elections just updated the results, and there's some surprises in a couple races we're going to talk about. I'm just going to make sure that, here we go. We are live, and you guys are watching. Okay, so big update here. About 30,000 absentee and early votes have been counted, and we see right off the bat one of the big surprises is District 21, Forrest Wolf, who was ahead Republican of Donna Mears. She's inched ahead of him now by less. It's like he was up by 135 votes, and now I think it's like less than 80 votes. So I'm going to go through these races, and we're going to see what happened to the statewide races, and then some of the other races in Anchorage and around the state, and how a few people have actually now are above the 50% plus one threshold. One of them being Scott Kawasaki in Fairbanks. With these results have skewed really kind of Democrat and progressive, these absentee and early votes. So let's just go through pull this up here. Let's go through the deal here. Hopefully you guys can see that. So we'll start with the statewide. Look at Lisa Murkowski. Now, Chewbacca was up by a few points before. Now it's basically a dead heat. Chewbacca's up by less than it's like 0.2%. I mean, this is just really, really wild. Again, when the ranked choice voting happens, these Buzz Kelly votes are going to go off first. They're probably going to benefit Chewbacca. But then really the ones we're going to look at are going to be these Pat Chesbro Democratic votes and where they go. And those are likely going to really go for Murkowski. So Murkowski's gained a little bit here on these absentee. And there's still some more to count from mostly rural absentee and early votes, but those probably are going to be updated tomorrow. This new update is most of the districts around the state. Peltola went up a little bit. She's at 48. She's almost at the 50%. So this Chris Bai is going to go off, and then once Nick Begich votes go off, that's going to kick her over the top almost certainly. So she went up. I think she was around 47, so she went up a little bit. Interestingly, Dunleavy he's still above the 51%. So that campaign must have really invested in absentee and early voting, because he's still above the 50% plus one threshold, where Guerra and Walker basically stayed the same. So it looks like at this point, unless there's a big change, some of these rural votes are going to probably benefit Walker and Guerra, but I don't think there's enough to really tip the scale here, enough to put Dunleavy below the 50% threshold. So it looks like unless something very weird happens, Dunleavy is probably going to win this one outright in the first round, which is, again, up here we have Peltola. She has two here, Republicans, Begich and Palin. She's still below 50%. And then up here, Murkowski and Chewbacca are dead heat. So both of these, Senate races and House races are going to go to the ranked choice, where it looks like Dunleavy is going to just win outright here in the first round. Pretty incredible. Let's go through some of these other races now. Most of these didn't change. A lot of these, Stedman was already winning. It's not going to change by anything. Jesse Keel's unopposed. Gary Stevens, the incumbent, well above the 50% threshold. He's going to win outright. Nothing changed here too much, so it looks like Jesse Bjorkman is still well ahead of Tuckerman Babcock. It's not going to be official until these votes are retabulated on next Wednesday at 4 p.m. They're going to do the retabulation. So as Andy Cizik votes are going to decide this race. This one is interesting. This one got even closer. I mean, literally, they all have a third. Now, Rosalind Casey here, she is basically a cancer to the political system. I was running in 2020. She was supposed to get out of the race as a Democrat. Von Imhoff almost lost to this QAnon guy. She was supposed to get out of the race. She got delusional, stayed in the race. I had to drop out. Didn't raise much money, didn't campaign. But the mere presence on the ballot has an impact. Same thing here. She's on the ballot, didn't raise hardly any money, hardly campaigned, but she's, because she's a Democrat with two Republicans, she's getting here 5,200 votes. Now, her votes are going to decide this race. So again, she's basically a cancer to the political system. She's one of these people who doesn't understand how it works and, some kind of ideological or maybe just delusional. So fascinating race though, because we have three people that are basically all at a third. Now, Casey, because she's last, her, there's probably going to be a few more votes coming in, but this is basically it. So she's at 32%. So her votes are going to recycle. And I can't imagine many of her votes. There's probably going to be a lot of bullet votes, and we're going to talk about some of these Anchorage races where these bullet votes are going to probably hurt an incumbent. But even if for people bullet voted, I mean, Giesel's still, man, barely ahead. Look at this. It's like, less than 70. I mean, it's like 60 some votes out of 15,000, 16,000 votes almost. Look at that. She's ahead of Roger Holland by, just like a razor thin margin. So Giesel's in good shape here, but Jesus, with this ranked choice voting and these votes getting recycled, it's going to be this one's going to be one of the interesting ranked choice ones to watch. Kaufman was already ahead. He's going to have the same thing. L.V. Gray Jackson was already ahead, so no change there. Matt Clayman, now he's further ahead. This was really close before. It was like 50.04. It was very, very close. But now Clayman's, he's, 400 votes ahead of Mia Costello. So this new update really helped Matt Clayman. He's going to win that race. Lukey Tobin over here, that's no change. She's, it's one of the Democrat Tom Begich seat where she's taken over. And up here, one of the Matt Clayman, that's one of the Democrat pickups. There's two Democratic pickups in the Senate. The other one's the Forrest Dunbar one. We'll see in a second. But no surprise here with Lukey Tobin. Dunbar was around 48. He's actually really, look at that. He's very, very close to the threshold for winning outright, but he's still below that. So there could be some more votes here counted, but it shouldn't change that too much. So interesting. You look at that, 8,000 votes in this district, but remember in the Giesel race up here, we were at, 16,000? Look at this district, this Giesel district, Holland, 16,000 people voted. South Anchorage, kind of, higher voting turnout. We go down here to the Dunbar race with Garantar, 8,000. It's half the votes is the Giesel Holland district. So Dunbar is here, not quite over the threshold, but once Garen's votes get recycled, he'll win by a lot. So Dunbar is the other Democratic pickup in the Senate. This was an open seat with redistricting. Wielkowski was ahead. He's more ahead now. That's not going to didn't change. Merrick, same thing. She's well ahead, still well ahead of Ken McCarty. Man, that is a beating. Look at that. He ran this weird campaign where he was like comparing her to AOC and Ilhan Omar and just kind of weird shit. But look at that beating that Merrick laid over on McCarty over there. This didn't change. The Shelley Hughes race, same kind of thing. She's way up. The David Wilson, basically the same percentages. What's going to happen here is these Scott Clayton votes are going to determine who wins, and unless every single one of them voted for Stephen Wright, then David Wilson should win re-election here. Schauer is still ahead of the percentages didn't change too much. He's still ahead of Doug Massey, so he's going to win re-election there. Mike Schauer, one of the races I missed in our predictions. We didn't miss many. That was one of them. And then here's another one. Kawasaki was before this. He was below 50%. With the update, Kawasaki is now above 50%. So there's if this holds, and there's some more votes coming in, I think. But this means Kawasaki is going to win outright. He's just going to win on the first round, and there's going to be no retabulation. That's a big that district got a little more conservative. That really shows kind of two things: how hard Scott worked. He's known as a really fierce campaigner. But then how much Matherly didn't really campaign over the summer. There was a lot of folks in Fairbanks telling me he wasn't doing much, and he's sitting here at 42%. I mean, this other guy is in the race, Joffrey. He didn't have any money. He was kind of a weird guy. He was wearing like a full COVID shield at one of these events, but he still peeled off 500 votes. But even if he wasn't in the race, Kawasaki, look at that. I mean, he still would have won. So Rob Myers, he's well ahead, and he's got 2/3 of the vote. Click Bishop again, he's well ahead. This didn't change much. He's going to stay there. And then Lyman Hoffman, obviously, he's well ahead. So the big surprise there is how close that in the Senate races. The big surprise is how close the Giesel Holland. It's like they basically all have a third, and then Kawasaki, he's he's over the 50% threshold, and then Matt Clayman is now well ahead of Mia Costello. So a couple updates there on those Senate races. Now we're going to go to the House races, and some of these are really interesting. We're going to go through. Ortiz, he's ahead, still ahead. That's no change. Rebecca Himschutt's well ahead of Kenny Skaffelstadt. That's the JKT seat that's vacant. Andy Story is unopposed. Sarah Hannon, just no change, well ahead. Louise Stutz was well ahead, no change. Sarah Vance is still ahead, no change there. Ruffridge is still beating Gillum, so he's going to oust Ron Gillum, the incumbent, but still a Republican. So no change in that race. Ben Carpenter's unopposed. Laddie Shaw, no change there. He's well ahead. Craig Johnson's looking good. He's above 50%, so he should just win this thing outright. In South Anchorage, that's an open seat with redistricting. Here's one that I wrote about today that's really interesting. There's two races I want to talk about in particular, where Republicans are going to be the favored Republicans are going to be probably affected negatively by ranked choice voting. Now, Featherly was about 43. He was below 44%. Now, with this new batch, he's at 45%. He's an independent. Julie Colomb here is at 39%. So Featherly picked up some votes. He's at 45. She's at 39. Now, these Ross Beeling voters, they're going to decide the race. Now, Beeling raised very little money, about $2,000. Half of that was non-monetary old signs. He's run before, so he's kind of known, and it changed a little bit, but his name's known, but he didn't spend any money. So if you're in this district and you're voting, you're picking three people. And don't forget, these races, these state house races, they're on the bottom of the ballot. You have Senate, House, Governor, State Senate. So you're at the bottom of the ballot. You got Ross Beeling, who raised basically almost no money, didn't really campaign, against two people who were campaigning and who were raising money. These 1,118 people, I think they weren't voting for Ross Beeling. They were voting against Julie Colomb and Walter Featherly. So the question is going to be is how many people who voted for Ross Beeling marked a second choice? I think not many. I mean, there could be up to a 50% drop off here, ballot exhaustion. And then how many of them actually ranked Julie Colomb second? Some of them are going to rank, just math shows, numbers show some percentage, maybe a small percentage, would have ranked Walter Featherly second. We saw in this U.S. House August primary, almost 30% of Begich voters voted Peltola second. Now that's a different dynamic of the race, but even if 10 or 15% of these Beeling voters rank Featherly second, Colomb's in trouble here. And this is very interesting how this ranked choice kind of thing works. Beeling, again, didn't raise really much money, didn't campaign, but he got 15% of the vote. So this one, I think Walter Featherly, kind of a surprise. I thought Julie was going to win, and she should have. I mean, look at Republicans here, when you add the percentages, have 55%. But if the Beeling voters bullet voted or some of them voted for Beeling, then Colomb's going to have a hard time winning. I got to do the numbers and figure out how many votes she would need of his votes to win, but it's going to be a lot. I mean, if anybody's watching and can do the quick math, how many Ross Beeling voters would need to, let's assume a 30% drop off. Let's just be conservative. If 30% of them dropped off, so if 300 and some dropped off, how many of remaining, what percentage of the remaining votes would have had to go for Julie from Ross votes to win? It's pretty high just by looking at the numbers here. So that's interesting. Featherly went up a little bit. 12, no surprise here, no change. Calvin Schrage ahead of Jay McDonald. Josephson, he was barely winning. He was barely beating Hensley. Now he's beating her by a lot more, a couple hundred votes. So this new update helped Josephson. He's winning by more now, almost 52% of the vote. By the way, Landmine picked Josephson to win that race. Lise Galvin, same deal, no change, well ahead. This is another one. Just like the Featherly Colomb race. Now, Denny Wells was at 45%. Now he's at 46%. Tom McKay, the incumbent, is at 39%. This is basically almost identical to the Featherly Julie Colomb race. You got David Ibeck here at 14%. Now, just like that race, Ibeck raised a total of $350 total in his whole campaign. So he's not a real candidate. He's a name on the ballot. So if you're in this district and you're voting and you're at the bottom of the ballot, why are you voting for David Ibeck? It's not because you like David Ibeck, because he didn't campaign. It's because you're voting against Tom McKay and against Denny Wells, because you don't want to vote for either of them. Now, same thing. How many of these Ibeck voters just bullet voted at the bottom of the ballot? They exhausted. I'm voting for this guy. I don't like the other ones. And then how many of them did a second choice? And then, again, how many of the second choice ones went to McKay? This is the same thing. He's in worse shape than Colomb, because she's at, in this one, the Colomb one, he's at, Featherly's at 45.06%, right? Now, in this one over here, Wells is at 46.15%. And again, David Ibeck didn't raise money, didn't campaign, didn't do anything. So these people who voted for Ibeck, very interesting situation here. These are two races. I actually think McKay and Colomb lose. I really do, based on just how the ballots get exhausted and the numbers that are showing right now. So these are two very interesting races that are going to be decided when we go to this ranked choice thing next Wednesday. Jenny Armstrong's lead went up a little bit. Again, this one's under litigation about her residency, so there's a kind of a looming court case on this district, on this race, so we'll see where that ends up going. Fields, no change here. He's well ahead. He's still well ahead of Harriet Drummond. Now, this is another one. This is kind of like the opposite of the Julie Colomb, Tom McKay races. But in this case, now Cliff Grow raised a lot of money. He's right here at 36%. Lynn Franks raised money. They were, I think they were telling their voters, hey, vote, rank second. They were both kind of actively campaigning. But just like Colomb and McKay, Grow could be in trouble here. David Nelson, the incumbent, if a whole bunch of these, Lynn Franks voters don't vote for Cliff Grow, if a lot don't vote for Cliff Grow, Nelson could end up winning this deal. Just kind of the opposite. In this case, 2 Democrats, 1 Republican, and the other races, 2 Republicans, 1 Democrat. So we have to watch this one. I mean, he's further away from the threshold. He's, about 7 points away from the threshold. So for this one to change, and look at the total here, 1,900, 2,000 votes. There's other races, 5,000, 7,000, 7,300. There's a very small number of votes. This includes the base. So there's, lower voter turnout in the midterm year. But, really, were these folks who voted for Lynn Franks, 387 of them, do they bullet vote? Did they? Now, if they're going to mark a second choice, it's likely going to be Grow. But how many of them did that? And then how many of them? Some are going to vote, Nelson second. Some percentage of them, small percentage, but it's going to happen. So this is another one of those very interesting races where we're going to have to see how voters behave and how the ballots get exhausted. Like I said before, don't forget these House races are at the bottom of the ballot. So as people vote, there's always a drop off anyways. But as people vote and they're in the booth and they're thinking and they're getting to the bottom, they might just kind of say, fuck it, I'm going to pick one person. So this is one of those races to watch as well. Genevieve Mina didn't change much. She's way ahead. Andrew Gray, his lead's increased. He's in a 4-way race and he's well above the 50% threshold. So Andrew Gray is this is the Ivy Svanholt seat, the open seat, because Ivy didn't run for re-election. Here's a real surprise here. Forrest Wolf, who was ahead by 135 votes, is now losing by 70-some votes to Donna Mears, who didn't really work too much, didn't campaign very hard, raise money. Forrest was out there. These numbers reflect how hard Forrest was working, because this is a Democratic district, and this is a razor-thin deal. This is very, very thin, but this is going to help this is going to make it more likely that the coalition forms in the House. Very close race here. 6,700 votes were, 70 votes separating the two. Stanley Wright, this race got closer, but Stanley Wright's still ahead. Now, Stanley Wright was ahead by more, but now it's tightened up a little bit. So we're at, what is that? 7, less than 100 votes separating the two. So there's probably going to be some more absentees coming in, and this one could tighten up a little bit. But this is within less than a percent margin here. But it looks like Stanley Wright, this is an open seat. He's going to, if this holds, he'll win that seat. And then Jamie Allard, no change, well ahead. Dan Sadler, former rep, he's going to win that one outright. Delana Johnson, no change. Tilton, no change. Eastman here is still above 50% with the new update. Again, like the Jenny Armstrong race, this one's under litigation over his membership in the Oath Keepers, and if that violates the Alaska Constitution, clause about not pledging allegiance to groups that want to overthrow the government. So this one's there's also litigation looming over this race. Sumner's doing a little better. Jesse Sumner, this is an open seat. This one, 4 Republicans. Nobody's close to the 50% threshold. So, we'll see what happens with these Jessica Wright voters, where they go, if they get distributed or if there's going to be some drop off, and then nobody's going to get, Menard or Sumner won't get 50% plus 1 from her vote. So then Rachel Allen's votes are going to be the next ones to recycle. And I think Jesse Sumner, he's up by almost over 10 points against Steve Menard. So he's probably in good shape on this one, but it's going to be 2 rounds of retabulation of votes, which is going to decide this race. Rauscher still way ahead, good shape. McCabe, he's in good shape. This is interesting because he's the incumbent. He's a Republican, but Doyle Holmes, who's a Republican, got almost 35% of the vote, which tells me a lot of Republicans, don't like Kevin McCabe or have a problem with Kevin McCabe. As the incumbent, he's at 45%. Now these Democrat here voters, they're going to decide the race. I think a lot of them are probably going to bullet vote. If they're going to pull a second choice, I think it's probably going to be more likely Doyle Holmes, but he would need like almost all of her votes to prevail. So Kevin McCabe should win this one. But just interesting that a third of the voters in this district Republican voters didn't vote for the incumbent Kevin McCabe. So watch out, Kevin. You got some 2,500 people who aren't fans. And then here's another interesting one in Fairbanks. Maxine Debert, Democrat, who we picked last week in our predictions to win. She was at 47-something%. She's at 49. I mean, she's almost at 50% plus one. She's less than 1% away from just winning outright. So again, Kelly Nash is way out there on the right, was telling people not to rank Bart LeBon second. Unlike the other races we were talking about with Featherly, the Featherly race with Ross Beeling in there, and then the Tom McKay race with David Ibeck in there. Those Republicans, Ibeck and Beeling, weren't campaigning, didn't raise money, weren't doing much. It was just kind of they were on the ballot. Nash was very actively, especially on social media, telling people Bart LeBon's a rhino, don't vote for Bart LeBon, don't rank Bart LeBon second. So she can, she's going to decide the race, and very certainly after the ranked choice voting happens, Maxine Debert's going to win. So that's going to be a Democratic pickup. And we picked her to win last week when we did our predictions. Early on, 2 months ago, 6 weeks ago, I thought that, kind of close district, but LeBon's not, he's well liked. He was part of the coalition 4 years ago, and then he became part of the Republican minority. But I didn't see her 6 weeks ago winning this race, but the money she raised, the momentum, and this Kelly Nash situation here, this Kelly Nash variable means this is going to be a Democratic pickup. Let's see here. Stapp, Republican, he was ahead, no change, still ahead. Prox unopposed. Now, Tomaszewski, he was above 50% before. With this new round, he's right below 50%. So if this holds, there'll be the ranked choice, and this Nate Damaris, who he kind of dropped, he withdrew, but he didn't withdraw in time. He wanted to get out of the race. He didn't get his paperwork turned in, so he wasn't campaigning. He wasn't doing much, but the voters he did get, enough of them are going to go for Tomaszewski, who Grier Hopkins got put into a more conservative district, so he was kind of a victim of the redistricting process. But Tomaszewski, if he stays below 50%, he should win after the ranked choice voting happens. Excuse me. And then Ashley Carrick, Adam Woolsey, she's still above 50%. That didn't change. Mike Cronk, in good shape here. He's way ahead. Didn't change. Bryce Edgman, unopposed. C.J. McCormick, there was a write-in attempt, but write-ins are just very difficult, so he's going to win. That's the Tiffany Zolkowski seat. And then this one, they didn't do any update on this district yet, so Neil Foster is up by 10 votes. It was 6 before. Maybe they did do an update. I don't know. I thought they didn't say they were. I thought they didn't update these rural districts yet. But Neil Foster up by 10 votes to Tyler Ivanoff, Alaska Independence Party candidate, who's run against Neil the last 2 cycles. So this is like super close race, very close. So we're gonna have to wait and see. And if neither one of them get to 50% plus one, then you have to do a ranked choice voting with these write-in candidates, which I'm betting almost all of them didn't do a second choice. Maybe some did, but there's only 22 of them. So that'll be interesting how that one turns out. And then Josiah Pakutak unopposed. So the big ones are this Giesel race is like they all have a third, but Giesel's in the lead. Forrest Wolf now losing to Democrat Donna Mears by a handful of votes. The Tom McKay and Julie Colomb races are going to be very interesting when the ranked choice kind of process goes on. And then Scott Kawasaki is now above the 50% threshold to just win outright in Fairbanks. So that's the update. There's more ballots to count. They're going to do another. I think the next one is Friday. I got to say, the Division of Elections, I don't know what the fuck's going on, but how can they? It's a week. It's been a week since the damn election, and now we're just getting this update with these absentee and early votes. I mean, they could have had the early votes done. I guess with the absentees, I understand you want to make sure someone didn't vote twice, but in Florida, they have a lot of absentee voters. A lot of older people live in Florida. They've been doing this for years. Florida figured it out. They had the votes counted. It was all, by the election day or the next day, everything was in there and more or less decided. So I don't know what's going on with the division of elections, but it's been a week, and there's several races where we still don't know the outcome. I understand the ranking. Okay, you got to wait till all the ballots come in. I can kind of understand that for the ranked choice. So some of those races with the ranking, all right. But for these races where it's close and there's a lot of absentee ballots, why not count the early votes? I mean, those are the same as election. I mean, somebody goes in there and somebody votes early. You have the ballot. Why can't those have been counted a week ago? And even the absentees, I don't really understand. I mean, years ago, this wasn't as big of a problem. Maybe there was less absentee voters, but my God, this is just a week, and we're going to have to wait till Friday, and then, to get the absentee and early vote, and then there's going to be probably more absentee votes before the ranked choice retabulation happens on November 23rd. So very frustrating. I mean, to people like me, the media, people who are reporting on this and observers, but also to the public who are kind of like, what's going on? Why do we have to wait a week or 2 weeks to get the results? And some of these races are changing and they're very close. I don't know. They need to figure out a way to do this better because it's very frustrating. And it's frankly getting old. I mean, it's just there needs to be a better way to count these votes earlier, especially the early votes, which are early in person. I don't know why those weren't just counted. They only counted on election day, the early votes up to Thursday. So they didn't count Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday early votes. Why not? Do they not have enough people? I mean, what's going on? Are they not working past, 5 p.m. or 6 p.m.? They should be working, from a week before the election. They should be working 20. They should have people working 12-hour shifts, 2 shifts a day to make sure we know what's going on. But that's the result. That's the update. The Senate has essentially organized itself. They haven't announced it yet, but there's going to be a bipartisan coalition in the Senate. It's a matter of when they're going to announce the positions and the members. I think they're still trying to, now with Kawasaki and Clayman surely winning, that locks in the 9 Democrats in the Senate. Click Bishop, Bert Stedman, and Gary Stevens are kind of the 3 amigos. They're a block. You add them to the 9, that's 12. And then it's what does Kathy Giessel do? What does Kelly Merrick do? What does James Kaufman do? There could very likely be a 14, 15-member bipartisan coalition in the Senate. There's definitely going to be a bipartisan coalition. I think they're waiting for today's vote. They might be announcing it soon. If not, they're going to wait till after the retabulation happens, and I doubt they're going to do it on Thanksgiving. So if we don't see an announcement this week, in the next week here, before next Wednesday on the Senate organization, it'll be after Thanksgiving. But my feeling is they're going to announce it very soon. The majority and who's who and who's president. And I'm kind of hearing Gary Stevens is president, who was Senate president before. And then I'm hearing Bert Stedman, Lyman Hoffman, co-chairs of finance, with maybe a vice chair of finance, maybe Click Bishop, maybe Donnie Olson. I think the Senate's going to go from 7 members on the finance committee to 9 members. And then there's been a whole bunch of talk out there about who's going to be majority leader and rules chair. And for rules chair, the name that's being thrown around a lot is Bill Wielechowski. But again, I haven't confirmed any of this. This is the thing is, when they're organizing, they don't talk very much. It's a very kind of private process, and there's a lot of trust they want to keep. So there's not a lot of talk, but some people inevitably do talk a little bit, and some stuff does get out. So I think we're going to have an announcement pretty soon in the Senate. In the House, we're looking at a very close 1921, 2020. If Walter Featherly and Denny Wells win, that's going to be a coalition. I mean, Donna Mears, she's going to beat Forrest Wolf, it looks like. So, you're already very close. And if those 2 win, it's going to be coalition territory. Josiah Pocketalk's going to be a decider. And if they pick off 1 or 2 Republicans even, that Louis Stutes I count as being in the coalition. And then if they pick off 1 or 2 more, they'll have a 23, potentially 22, 23-member coalition in the House. So it's very likely we're going to have a Republican governor, Mike Dunleavy, and then 2 coalitions in the House and the Senate, which is going to be very critical who Dunleavy chooses as legislative director. He already appointed Tyson Gallagher as chief of staff, who's been acting chief of staff. But with 2 coalitions, it's going to be very hard for him to get his agenda done if he doesn't make a lot of allies and work with the people in the House and the Senate. And the first 4 years, especially the first year, was poisonous, toxic, a lot of trust broken. There was a lot of trust lost, and not good relationships with the legislature. So if Dunleavy wants to do anything in his second term, especially in the first 2 years with two coalitions, which I think is going to happen, he needs to really work hard and have the right people in place to be able to work with the legislature on his policies, on his agenda, and things like the budget and the dividend. The price of oil is still above $90 a barrel, but if the price of oil goes down, which we know it will because it always does, that's going to have an impact. And there's just going to be a very kind of gridlocked, divided government here going forward. The Senate's definitely going to be a coalition. It's just a matter of time when they announce. And then the House, we'll see what happens with a few of these races and how that affects it. But I think very likely there's going to be a coalition in the House too. So that's the update, folks. Stay tuned. There's going to be another update on Friday. See where that goes. And then next week before Thanksgiving, there's going to be this ranked choice retabulation, which we're going to see a lot of how the results go and some of those, especially the big races. I can't believe we'll go back here one more time to the Murkowski, who was losing by a few points to Chewbacca. Look at that. Lisa Murkowski is now right behind Kelly Chewbacca. I mean, it's dead heat, basically, 103, 500 votes dividing them. And then we're going to have, these Buzz Kelly voters. They're going to, recycle, do a little second choice votes, and where that goes, 3% almost. And then the Chesbro votes are going to decide how the race goes. So Lisa Murkowski's in really good shape to win re-election based on, Democrat voters aren't going to be voting for Kelly Chewbacca, many of them. And then Peltola is a little bit more ahead, as she was 47 to 48, so she should win here as well. And then Dunleavy's still above 50%, which is pretty incredible when Peltola and Murkowski are doing as well as they're doing, and then you got Dunleavy, who's a Republican, who's granted he had some kind of divided opponents here between Guerra and Walker, and then Pierce didn't really kind of a no factor, but he did get 10,000 votes. So anyways, that's the update. Stay tuned for more updates here from the Landmine. I'll be at RDC, the Resource Development Conference, tomorrow for the Alaska Political Report. We have a booth there. By the way, if you're watching this and you like the inside, really deep analysis of the elections and the budget and the lobbyists and everything, consider getting a subscription to the Alaska Political Report. You can get it for your organization. It's $12.99 a year for organization. You can add multiple email addresses for people in your organization or your business. We have a government rate of $9.99 for legislative offices and government entities. So if you're interested in the inside, really deep analysis of the budget, what's happening in Juneau, the calendars for the governor, the correspondence for the governor, the calendars for the commissioners, all of this really kind of deep in reporting analysis of what's going on in the government, staff lists, executive departures and hirings, legislative staff, there's all kinds of things that we track that nobody else does. So it's $12.99 a year for an organization. You can add multiple email addresses for one subscription. If you're in a legislative office or a government agency, we do a discount. And if you're a nonprofit, we can do a little, depending on what's going on, we can do a little bit of a discount too. We're doing a deal now where if you subscribe to the Alaska Political Report right now, your subscription will be good through the end of next year. So you'll essentially get a month and a half for free. And the budget comes out, the governor's budget's going to come out on December 15th, and we're going to have a big breakdown of the capital and operating budget, what the governor's proposing. And then after that, session's going to start, and we're going to be, a lot of new legislators, a lot of new activity going to be happening, where bills are going to be, the process, lobbyists, what they're doing. It's a really good report. So if you're interested and want to track what's happening in state government, you can go to akpoliticalreport.com. You can get a hold of me. I can send you information, or you can send me an email, jeff@akpoliticalreport.com. I can send you some previous editions and give you an idea of kind of what's in there. I really appreciate that. So that's the update. We'll see you guys next time. Oh, and one more thing. If you're watching this and you like our coverage and you enjoy the Landmine, please consider buying an ad, supporting us. You can go to alaskalandmine.com/donate. You can do it one time, $10, $100. You can do a monthly recurring. It's me, it's Allison, it's Paxson, it's Scott. We have a big team. I'm going to Juneau. It's not cheap keeping this thing going. We do appreciate all of our sponsors and advertisers and donors, but if you can, contribute to the Landmine, we'd really appreciate it. It's how we keep kind of the bills paid and we keep things going here. So I appreciate that. Again, alaskalandmine.com/donate, or you can buy an ad. We're always selling ads. And right now we have a lot more ad space because the election's over. So appreciate watching. Stay tuned for more.